Okay, so another topic you wanted to talk about was also the music education that's going
Oh
on right
yeah.
now.
Yes. Well, allow me to get on my pedestal and soapbox here. Excuse me.
Okay, go for it.
The big thing I think nowadays is, and I think this is something that's felt by it's an opinion shared by a lot of people, is that the arts, and I really can't speak for the rest of the country because I don't know what the curriculum is for the rest of the country, but particularly in New York, there has been sort of a seemingly small movement. And I say small because it hasn't happened, it hasn't gone into full force, but there's been sort of small sort of movements happening towards this, where it would seem that the arts, particularly, not just music, but like the arts, whether it's anything considered artistic, it's kind of being devalued for things that are more in line, I guess, with like sort of the Industrial Revolution-esque curriculum, stuff that'll help you, quote unquote, get a job, whether it's, arithmetic, literature, geography, science, history. These are important subject matters, don't get me wrong, but I can't imagine, and I guess you guys could speak to this as well, like I can't imagine going to school and not having that, personally for me, that music class to look forward to after that 45-minute or an hour, I don't even know how long the classes were, but like that 45-minute, calculus class or whatever it was. I mean, that's kind of unfortunate that it seems, again, in New York, that there's been small movements happening where this would be the case. And I just remember, like, I can only speak to this with regards to my own perception of how monumental and important music education, public school music education, has been for me, because I never really took private lessons for guitar or anything like that. I mean, I went to high school, and my music teachers were like these geniuses that you could crack their noggin open and they could teach you about pretty much anything. And the cool thing about my high school's music department, so back in when I went to high school, and shout out to Francis Lewis. Yeah. Cool thing about my music department back when I was in high school is that our music teachers weren't stuck in one frame of mind. They weren't just there wasn't just a jazz guy or just a classical guy. They were into everything, and that kind of I don't know, that kind of passion for music rubs off on somebody who likes music but is trying to get into it but isn't sure about how much he wants to get into it. And that was me. I mean, I like music, I like guitar, but I was more interested in what I can get out of it versus what it could do for me. And that's going down to another conversation that's, I guess, leading towards more philosophical topics. But one of the things I can speak to with regards to why public school music education is important is that it personally, for me, allowed me to learn about a lot of things that I apply to my life. Like, for example, like I said before, my music teachers, they're very open-minded. For example, one of my music teachers, his name was Mr. Jordan. He's a very, very big influence on me, not only as a musician, but very much so as a man. I mean, he's a very, very sort of like direct kind of guy. If something sucks, he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you this sucks. And I mean, and that you need to hear that. You need to hear that. Whereas there's some schools where I don't know if you've heard about this, but they're like a teacher would give a kid a bad grade, and that kid would tell his mom, and that mom would call that teacher and say, you kind of have to change this grade because so and so has to graduate and do get to this college, et cetera, et cetera. If the teacher stands by their grade, then that parent's going to call the principal and going to make a big deal out of it, and then they're going to start this hoopla to get that grade to change. Even though that kid doesn't deserve it, he's going to walk away with a passing grade, and that guy's going to go into the workforce and be in charge of the electricity for the city or whatever, and he might not be the best guy for the job. So I mean, that's why it's kind of important to tell people if they're bad at a job, they shouldn't be able to get it. And if you're unable to, basically it all stems down to the core belief of if you suck, you need to know. And Mr. Jordan, bless his heart, when I sucked at something, he let me know, and it got me better. And like there's not a lot of teachers in high school where, and again, my high school is great. I don't have anything bad to say about anybody on the staff or anything like that. But like music in particular, I just remember being kind of astounded. Like my music teacher would care so much about me playing this piece correctly or not, to the point where he'd be like, no, that wasn't good. You were kind of really bad at it. I'm like, well, I got like 50% of the notes. He goes, okay, that's 50. That's a 50 on your test. You failed. I'm like, well, I guess, yeah. You know, I mean, and I remember one of the things that was very, very, again, sort of monumental to me in my life was the fact that when I was discovering sort of music and how much it meant to me, blah, blah, blah. One of the things I remember was Mr. Jordan taking me to the side and introducing me to Eddie Hazel, who was the guitar player for Parliament Funkadelic. And I mean, like, it was very cool, because like, how many teachers do you know how many music teachers, let's be specific, do you know that take their kids aside and go, you need to listen to this guy, he's awesome, right? I mean, that right there is cool points. Cool points for Mr. Jordan. But like, this is a guy who really, really, really showed me in a lot of ways how having a wide palette in terms of what you draw from is not only beneficial but kind of recommended in terms of doing something original. And he'd be into classical music. I'd get classical pieces from him. I'd get jazz pieces from him. I'd get rock pieces from him, as well as my other music teacher, Mr. DeLuca. My God, that guy, he's incredible too, because he would not only show me about these guitar players that I've never heard about, like Rory Gallagher. Like I didn't know who the hell that guy was before Mr. DeLuca, and you know, as well as showing me like a lot of Hendrix's B-sides and stuff like that. I mean, these guys in the music department showed me that music isn't just what is, I guess, advised on a curriculum. It's not just, you know, what's that song called? Ode to Joy, and these things that, you know, you see in a Mel Bay book, that if you allow a teacher's passion to guide what they feel a kid would gravitate towards, and teach it to them, that they would not only open their eyes to the subject matter, but to pursue, you know, digging deeper into that subject matter. I don't know if I'm making any sense saying this, but like, the basic idea is like they kind of saw me, a 16, 15-year-old guy. I don't even know how long. Yeah, that's about right. 15, 16-year-old kid in rock music. They saw me and they're like, okay, he's not maybe the biggest fan of Volga Boatman, but he might like, you know, Hendrix. He might like some Django Reinhardt. And if he's feeling a little crazy, we could show him some AC/DC. And I mean, like, you know, this is just goes to show like how I think when you allow and this goes for art teachers in general, because I had an art teacher, Mr. Mason in Francis Lewis, who was just as cool. Who, you know, I remember him talking to me about introducing me to conceptual art, because he would give us assignments, and based on how we would handle or go about these assignments, he'd go like, "Oh, you know, this looks very much like something that would be a concept." I remember one of the big art things that was going on in the time was in New York, in Central Park. There was like this guy who built a scaffolding thing in Central Park that would be like this kind of like, I don't know, an archway that was orange, and he goes like, that's conceptual art. You might like that too, and blah blah blah. Like, the basic idea here that I'm trying to get to is art teachers, when given sort of the freedom to speak to that creative genius, because that's really what it is, to the creative genius of these art students, when they nurture that and develop that customarily to that student, they open them up to much greater things in life, such much greater ways of thinking. Because one of the biggest benefits, and this is kind of like, I know I've been rambling on different tangents as I famously do, but like I want to tie this all up and bring it all home by saying that one of the biggest things in terms of music education that was monumental to my life was the fact that in teaching me to appreciate all different kinds of music from all different kinds of cultures, whether it's jazz, blues, rock, classical, whatever, in doing that, my teachers sort of kind of opened my mind to opening myself up to not just that culture's different music, but there are different foods, there are different styles, there are different ways of life. And once you start opening your mind up to the differences in music, and this is, again, I'm only talking from my own life and my own perception, but once you start opening your mind up to the different styles of music, from if you could be somebody who could listen to metal and then listen to blues and then listen to pop all in one day, there's nothing to say that you can't listen to that you can't have Chinese food and then go down and have a slice of pizza, and that kind of like snowballs into a way of thinking where you could see somebody who's Latino and be friends with them, and then also be friends with somebody who's Asian, or somebody who's black, or somebody who's white. You start breaking down these barriers and these genre limitations, and in life, culturally, racially, otherwise. And that's why I think that something like music is really sort of, it could be particularly with kids because of how I guess quickly kids gravitate towards new music than adults, and I guess. Music can be that thing that can sort of teach people that it's okay to explore the differences. And in exploring the differences, you have no choice but to embrace the differences, because you'll eventually land on something you like. You'll eventually find, if you're a guy who's only into Megadeth, maybe something that's technically proficient, like a Pat Metheny jazz album, might be your speed, because that guy can shred with the best of them. Or Al Di Meola, who was one of my guys, And when you embrace the differences in something like music, in the different genres, you'd be able to. I really do believe that that's been a very key factor for me in how I have been able to accept people. And that all started with that sort of music education that sort of told me, like, hey, it's okay to not just be the rock guy. You can like R&B, you can like pop, you can like jazz, you can like all this stuff. And as a matter of fact, let me encourage you, take this album home, enjoy. I mean, it all started with my music teachers, and I just really thank them. And I know for a fact that they cannot be the only teachers like that. And again, I'm not saying that it's just in the arts. I'm sure there's English teachers who are like that as well, who see this fire, this passion in their students, and they go, you know what, you really like this, you really like The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Why don't you check out Grapes of Wrath? You might like that as well. They're teachers like that. But I just feel like personally, for me, I can attest to the music department, what they're facing these days in the New York State. So again, I just think it's very important, and it's the arts are important. That's what I'm trying to get at here, people. The arts are important. Damn it!
It is
well, they
important.
really are. I mean, creative thinking is something that just seems to be really falling by the wayside. There's so many. I mean, you see so much examples of creativity out there, but then you look at things like, well, Hollywood is remaking a new movie every year, and it's just the same movie every couple of years, just with a new director.
But they're rebooting it.
Yeah, there's no creativity there. And then the pop music scene as a whole, pop music kind of was one of those things where it wasn't always really super wide-ranged anyway, but it kind of still had to be. You had to have a little bit of variety. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you'd be forgotten. And nowadays, it all seems to be kind of the same thing, and people can name all the names of all these people and these artists, but they don't necessarily think of these artists for their songs. They think of these artists for their clothing line or their
yeah.
That's interesting. I know. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Okay, guys, hold that thought. We're into fashion. Hold that thought. We gotta take a small, tiny little break at the top of the hour. And we'll be right back, and then I got Spills and Curses, cover Slipknot, so don't go away.
Nice.
Should be good.
Woohoo! Let's Talk About the Music is starting.
What is Let's Talk About the Music, and why are you so excited about it?
It's a podcast with controversial talk and a global mix of music.
Oh, cool. How and where can I listen?
Just go to letstalkaboutthemusic.com and click follow to be sure to get all the info about the bands that are playing and see their music videos. Then click on Spreaker or iTunes to listen live and even chat with other listeners and the host herself.
What day and time is Let's Talk About the Music on?
Every Wednesday night from 8 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time.
I think I'll tune in. Thanks for the info.
Who did this sound effect?